at movement to a new equilibrium. When does that occur? The equilibrium price should remain unchanged only so long as the demand and supply curves remain what? Unchanged. If either of the curves shifts, a new equilibrium will be formed. Let's look firstly at a change in demand. If one of the determinants of demand change other than price, the whole demand curve will what? Shift, as I said before when we were in class. This will lead to a movement along the what? Supply curve to the what? New intersection. For example, in figure 2.7, let's go down there, this one, this figure right here. Notice that the demand curve moves from D1 to what? D2. What happens here? There you have a new brand equilibrium price and what? Equilibrium what? Quantity. Alright? So what you can do now is to pause the video and draw this curve. So as I go through the information, you can relate to it as you look on the video. Alright? For example, in figure 2.7, if a rise in consumer incomes led to the demand curve shifting to D2, there would be a shortage of H minus G at the original price, equilibrium price. Alright? Meaning, what happens here now? There's a movement from what? Here to here. Should there be a what? Shortage right here. Don't it? In between this space right here, as you see, I'm pointing there. Good? Between G to H. Should there be a shortage? This would cause price to rise to what? The new equilibrium, which is price, equilibrium price 2. As it did so, there would be a movement along the what? Supply curve from point G to point I. And along the demand curve from D2 and along the new demand curve from D2 from point H. So there's a movement along the supply curve from point G to point what? I, from here to here. Good? Nice. And along the new demand curve, which is D2, from point what? H to point I. See there? Point H to point what? I. Because there's a shortage, there's a what? Movement down to point what? I. To get back to equilibrium. Alright? Equilibrium quantity would rise from what? Q equilibrium quantity 1 to equilibrium quantity 2. The effect of the shift in demand, therefore, has been a what? Movement along the supply curve from the old equilibrium to the what? New, from point G to point I. That is a change in demand, right? Let's look at now a change in supply. Likewise, if one of the determinants of supply changes other than price, the whole supply curve will what? Shift. This will lead to a movement along the demand curve to the new intersection. Let's look at it now. In this case, is a what? Shift in supply. And you see there is a movement from what? G to K. Good? Alright. From, should I say? Yeah. From G to K. From S1 to S2. Alright. For example, in figure 2.8, it costs, if cost of production rose, the supply curve would what? Shift to the what? Left. So, which is to S2. There would be a shortage of, there would be a shortage at the old price, which is what? Equilibrium price 1, which is G to J. Right here. Good. Price would rise from PE1 to PE3. Quantity would fall from Q1 to Q3 In other words, there would be a movement along the what? Demand curve from G to K and along the new supply curve from point what? J to K. So look at firstly G to K on the on demand curve from G to K and on the supply curve now from what? Point J to point K. Alright? So just to highlight something, this movement represents what? Price. But this movement between here G and G represents what? Quantity. From G to J. So so from so 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 from G so from G to J represents what? Quantity, right? To summarize, a shift in one curve leads to what? Movement along the other curve to a new intersection point. Sometimes a number of determinants might change. This might lead to a what? Shift in both curves. When this when this happens, equilibrium simply moves from the point where the old curves intersected to the point where the what? New ones intersect.